one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, stood on a stage and told the entire scientific community something most people are too afraid to say out loud. He told them they were faking it. Not all of them, but enough of them that it should scare you. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what he meant. And you are never going to look at a science headline the same way again. His name was Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner, one of the sharpest minds of the 20th century, a man who helped build the atomic bomb, who rewrote the rules of quantum physics, who could explain the most complicated ideas in the universe using nothing but plain language and a piece of chalk. And in 1974, at a commencement speech at Caltech, this same man looked out at a room full of graduating scientists and basically told them that a huge portion of what gets published as science today is not science at all. It just looks like science. It wears the costume of science, but underneath, something critical is missing. He had a name for it. He called it cargo cult science. And once you hear the story behind that name, you will never unsee it in the world around you. Here is the open loop. Stick with me, because by the middle of this video, I'm going to show you the exact test Feynman used to tell real science apart from fake science in under 60 seconds. It is shockingly simple. But first you need to understand where this idea even came from, because the story behind cargo cult science sounds like something out of a movie. During World War II, the military built airstrips on remote islands in the South Pacific. Planes landed loaded with food, medicine, tools, supplies. The islanders who lived there had never seen anything like it. To them, it looked like magic. Metal birds falling from the sky, delivering treasure. Then the war ended. The soldiers packed up. The planes stopped coming. And the islanders wanted the magic back. So what did they do? They rebuilt what they remembered seeing. They cleared long strips of land shaped like runways. They built control towers out of bamboo. They carved headsets out of wood and sat in them, waiting, mimicking every motion they had watched the soldiers make. They copied the form perfectly, but the planes never came back. Because they were missing the one thing that actually mattered: the radio signals, the logistics, the real infrastructure underneath the surface. They had built something that looked exactly like an airport, but functioned like nothing at all. Feynman looked at modern science and saw the same pattern happening. Researchers going through all the right motions, publishing papers, running experiments, using official language, wearing the lab coat, but quietly skipping the one ingredient that actually makes science real. And that ingredient is brutal honesty about your own results, even when it hurts you. Let that sink in for a second, because this is where most people get confused about what science even is. Pattern, interrupt. Quick question for you. What do you think separates real science from fake science? Most people would say equipment, or funding, or having a PhD. None of that is it. Here is the real answer. Real science requires you to actively try to prove yourself wrong. Not just test your idea. Attack it. Look for every possible way you might be fooling yourself. And report that too, even if it weakens your own conclusion. That is the entire secret. Feynman used to say, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person in the world to fool. Think about how rare that actually is in real life. How many people do you know who go out of their way to prove themselves wrong? Almost nobody. It feels unnatural. It feels like sabotaging your own work. But according to Feynman, that discomfort is the whole point. If it feels comfortable, you are probably not doing it right. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable for modern science itself. Feynman pointed to a very specific historical example to show what happens when that self-doubt disappears. Back in the early 1900s, a scientist measured the charge of the electron and got a number that was slightly off from the true value. Nobody caught the error at first. But here is the strange part. For years afterward, other scientists kept measuring the same thing, and the results crept slowly closer to the correct number instead of landing on it immediately. Why would that happen? Because when a new measurement came out too different from the accepted number, researchers unconsciously assumed they had made a mistake and dug around for a reason to adjust their result closer to what everyone expected. When it came out close to the accepted number, they accepted it without much extra scrutiny. Nobody was lying. Nobody was cheating on purpose. But an invisible bias was steering the results anyway, and it took years before someone finally measured it correctly, and the whole field jumped to the real number all at once. That story terrified Feynman, not because people were dishonest, but because it proved how easily honest people fool themselves without even realizing it is happening. And if that could happen with something as precise as electron charge, Imagine how much easier it is to happen in messier fields. Midpoint twist. Here is the part that changes how you see the entire modern information landscape. Feynman was not just warning scientists in that room in 1974. He was accidentally describing something that would explode decades later. Because cargo cult science does not just live in laboratories anymore. It lives in your feed. Every time you see a headline promising a miracle diet backed by science, or a supplement study funded by the company that sells the supplement, or a viral claim with zero mention of sample size, control groups, or peer review, you are looking at a modern airstrip built out of bamboo. It has the shape of science, charts, percentages, a person in a white coat. But the invisible radio signal underneath, the actual rigorous self-doubt, is missing. And here is the test Feynman gave us, the one I promised earlier. Ask yourself 3 questions before trusting any scientific claim. First, did the researchers actively try to disprove their own idea, or did they only look for evidence that supported it? Second, is there enough detail intruded that someone else could repeat the exact experiment and check the results themselves? Third, does the claim mention its own weaknesses and uncertainties, or does it sound suspiciously confident with no downside at all? Real science almost always sounds a little unsure of itself, because true researchers know exactly how easy it is to be wrong. Fake science, cargo cult science, sounds certain, clean, and convenient, because convenience sells better than honesty. Say that test in your head the next time a headline tries to shock you into sharing it. Climax. So why does this matter so much right now in a world completely flooded with information? Because Feynman was not just protecting science from bad scientists. He was handing every single one of us armor against being fooled. In an age where being fooled has never been easier or more profitable for the people fooling us. Cargo cult thinking is not just a science problem. It is a human problem. We copy the surface of things we do not fully understand, all the time, in every part of life, and mistake the copy for the real thing. Feynman's final warning was not really about laboratories at all. It was about honesty, real honesty, the uncomfortable kind, where you are willing to tear apart your own favorite idea if the evidence demands it. That is rare. That is hard, and that is exactly why it still matters more than 50 years later. Before you go, if this rewired the way you look at headlines and claims online, hit like, so this reaches more people who need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more of Feynman's mind explained in plain language, and drop a comment telling me one claim you have seen recently that might actually be cargo cult science in disguise. See you in the next one.